guys, Free Play Frank. Today I've got part 2 of the CMC vintage lathe restoration. And then I'm going to play a great Canadian classic, Wild Eyes, by a band called the Stampeders. Now this is a band of native Canadians that started in Calgary in 1965. They're a great band, great song, you guys are going to love it. My shout out tonight goes to A-Bomb 79. Now, he's another machinist. I'm not sure which state he's in, somewhere in the Midwest. And he's done all kinds of really good videos about machining, and he's toured other machine shops, and he does really high quality work. And if you're into machining, you gotta watch A-Bomb 79's channel. It's a good channel, and I highly recommend it. All right, let's do it. Motor taken off the frame, and I got the frame turned upside down, and then to mount it I've made this. I've got a piece of galvanized pipe welded to the frame, and I have a 5/8 ready rod and these two brackets here that are going to be welded onto the next part of the frame. And I've also attached these vertical pieces here to the bottom. I've got 3 of them. I got this strap holding them at roughly where they're going to go, because they can't stand by themselves with only one bolt holding it at the bottom. It's too much strain on that one bolt. And then I have this one on this side here. This one was a bit of a pain in the butt to do, because it had to cut out a slot here and slightly bend the tubing to get it to clear this part of the lathe. And I also made sure that all my controls and everything will work with this stuff in the way. And then I also made this part here. You can see where the 2 dowel pins and this big bolt went through. So I have a bracket made out of 3x4 angle iron with another piece of that square tubing, bringing it up to the same height as the other 2. And then this is where I'm gonna attach the clutch release or belt release lever. Okay, so I've got this shaft here. I made this pulley. This pulley is going to drive the big flat belts on the lathe. I made this out of a V-belt style pulley. I machined the shivs off and put the same chamfer on it as the big pulleys have. You can see how the center of it is slightly higher. The purpose of that is so that the belt always runs to the middle of the pulley. And I've got this all pretty much squared up here, ready to be tacked together. So I have a belt tensioning device that's going to go on here like this. This piece of steel here with a piece of ready rod that's going to push against the frame that I made for the motor. And I have these 2 pieces here. It's a small piece of pipe, and then this little piece of 1/2-inch flat bar I'm going to weld onto here for it to push against, and I've got a nut on each side so that I can tighten it or loosen it. And I've also chamfered down the inside of this hole here, or beveled it so that it's like this shape, because as the thing tightens it, this is going to have to move slightly up and down like this. Okay, I made these pieces now. This is the A-frame part that holds the motor frame up. So I started out by making my template. And you see I did the measurements. I figured out that this height here, from here to here, needs to be 8 inches. So I wanted 8 inches higher so that I got enough room to tighten the belts, and so that the motor can hang down at the other end. So these go like this. And then this piece here, like that, and then that piece here goes in between this part here. This frame's still sitting upside down. So what I did here was I transferred all the measurements from these 3 pillars that I made here, and I drew the the shape of it on the table here where each one goes, so that I could get all the measurements figured out where I need it to be here. So I've got this all figured out how it's going to be welded, because there has to be enough clearance. I also made sure that I have enough clearance between here and here for the belt when this goes tight, and there should be about 1.5 inches. And then over here, that A-frame made out of the 1-inch square tubing is going to attach between these two pieces of angle iron here. So it's going to be like this, and it's going to come up like this, and then down like this. So I've got square pieces of flat bar here that fit inside the tube, but just not quite. It's just a little bit tight so that I can move it around. I get a little bit of, I can tilt it like this or like this, or I could flip this around, and that'll give me more clearance to move this back if I have to. And I've done the same over here because of this pedestal that I made here. I had to modify it to clear down there, so now it's not square with the other ones. So what I'm going to have to do here is I'm going to have to tilt this slightly so that it sits at the right angle to match the other two. This one is square because this is rigid. So I'm going to get this all tacked together, and then I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, here's what it looks like tacked together upside down. So now next step, I'm going to get this hanging from the engine hoist over top of the lathe, and we'll try and line it up with those pillars. Okay, I've got it mounted on the lathe and tacked together now. See, I just put just enough tacks on it to hold it. I welded these bolts to the bottom of these square plates because it's going to be a lot easier to drop this whole unit on top of 3 studs than to try to locate 3 bolts into threads underneath. And the way I got this parallel was I stood on a step ladder, so I was up real high, and then I lined this up so that it was parallel to the spindle shaft. And then to get the height, I had to go off of this gap here that separates the 2 halves of the spindle bearings. So I measured from here to the shaft, and then the same here on this side, and you can see the gap there where the cap comes off, and measured to the shaft here, and it's 17 3/16. And what I was originally planning for this pulley here was to slide it along and then tighten it up so that I could use it for all 3 positions, but I don't think that's going to work. I think it'll probably work for the largest pulley on the spindle and the center one, but I don't think it's going to work for the highest speed, because this will end up, because this doesn't have that much travel. I think it probably has maybe 10 inches of travel, so it'll probably end up stretching not enough to tighten the belt. But we'll see. If I can get it to work on the lowest 2, it'll work for what I need it to do. So I got this all tacked together, and it's all square now. So the next step is I'm going to go along and I'm going to weld everything up solid, and I'm going to have to disassemble it all and weld the back of everything and prep it all for paint. So I'll come back when I've got that done. Okay, here it is, welded solid and ground down, ready to be painted. I got the ends of these things welded solid so that it fits on top of these. See, this one's at a funny angle. I try to correct. You can see it's lined up with the one behind it. They're both straight. So I can line up all 3 of them. Alrighty. Okay, I reassembled it just to check the belt length. Found an old broken cheap Chinese tape measure and determined that the belt length I need is 72 inches, and I tried it in all 3 positions and it will work.
Your wild eyes have nothing to do for your wild eyes. Your wild eyes are hypnotized by your wild eyes. Wild eyes are so present for your wild eyes. Evil knows I fell in your evil spell. Wild eyes, the blues disguising your wild eyes. The wild eyes, a wicked disguising your wild eyes. The wild eyes, filled with desire, your wild eyes. The wild eyes, are burning with fire, your wild eyes. Let me rest a while near your fiery smile. Wild eyes, I'm coming to get you now, wild eyes. The wild eyes, I'm willing to let you know, wild eyes. The wild eyes, I'm taking you home with me, wild eyes. The wild eyes, I got to be alone with you, wild eyes. Evil knows I fell in your evil spell. Lord knows I fell. Lord knows I fell for your wild eyes. Alright, that was Wild Eyes by the Stampeders. Thanks guys for joining me, and we'll see you next week. Take care.